Hello everyone and a warm welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the Josephus again and the Testimonium Flavianum, and looking at some of the details around who isn't mentioning the Testimonium Flavianum, even though they are reading Josephus's works. I haven't really seen anyone go into any detail around individuals who are Christians and so on, especially, all Christians who don't mention Josephus and his Testimonium before Eusebius does in the early 300s. Of course, we have no pagan attestations of these lines as well, and we might reasonably expect to find them in pagan authorship. I mean, pagans were talking about Christians, but of course it's with Christians that we would expect to see this glowing review of Jesus Christ and Christians and so on in the first century as well. And if you go back and have a look at 2 or 3 videos ago, I made a video just explaining the fact that there are no there are no attestations to Jesus Christ or Christians even in the first century that we can really reliably conclude upon. Josephus here would be a first century attestation, but it is just decidedly lacking in any kind of credibility, in any serious and reliable veracity with the claim here of the Testimonium. So we're going to have a look just through the explicit mentions here that name Josephus, or that name his works in the first, up to 400 CE. And we're going to find, even after this Testimonium was written, that there are books and antiquities of the Jews is being circulated that probably doesn't have this line or these lines in it, this Testimonium in it. So the first person we're going to look at is Theophilus of Antioch, 170 to 180 roughly. He's writing Ad Autolycum, 323, 170 to 180, the date approximately, of course. So these are explicit mentions. So he names Josephus, who wrote the Jewish wars, as a witness of Jewish antiquity and chronology. So he's already naming Jewish wars, and against Appian here as well. So uses Josephus alongside Manetho and Menander to argue scriptures antiquity. Now, an interesting thing about Jewish wars is it actually has the passages either side of the Testimonium, with the Testimonium missing in it. And he may, of course, have read antiquities, but he obviously doesn't say anything. Irenaeus of Lyon, writing around 202, fragments here 320 and 53. So this is in the late 2nd century, of course. Josephus says about Moses' Ethiopian campaign. So antiquities, the work implied here is antiquities, and the early Christian use of antiquities from a biblical, for biblical and historical detail. Clement of Alexandria, dated before about 215. Stromata, 121, writing around 202 again. Names Josephus, Flavius Josephus, the Jew, citing chronological totals here. So he's likely referencing here wars and antiquities, and combines Josephus Josephine figures into a Christian chronology. Doesn't notice the Testimonium. Messias Felix, Octavius 33, writing in the early 3rd century, now 200 to 230, directs the reader to the books of Flavius Josephus about the Judean War. So he's talking about the Jewish wars here, but books of Josephus again might imply that he knew antiquities as well. Early Latin Christian appealed to Josephus by name, of course. Origen, now he scours he reads Antiquities, and against Appian, we know this very well. By name, of course, he treats Josephus as a non-Christian witness. He references John the Baptist, James, the brother of Jesus, who is called Christ, of course, but that is a fraudulent entry as well. And the Jewish Antiquities, of course, multiple explicit references here, key for early Christian knowledge of the Antiquities as well. Completely fails to pick up on the Testimonium Flavianum, and don't listen to anybody who said it otherwise. He doesn't reference it. He does not mention anything within it. He is silent on the the Testimonium Flavianum. Anatolius of Alexandria, Pascal Canon 3, his work, around 270 now, lists Philo and Josephus and Musaeus as authorities on Passover reckoning. He likely is using here against Appian and/or Antiquities. Okay, shows Josephus used in computistical and chronological debate. Okay, Eusebius, of course. Now he is where we get the quote, and he comes up in this. Anyway, Jerome includes an entry on Josephus, paraphrases the Jesus notice credubatum esse Christus. And this is in Antiquities 18, late 4th century, of course, Latin Christian testimony to Josephus by name. So he's writing in the 390s, but he fails to mention after Eusebius has mentioned this. He's also not seeing this, and he's reading Antiquities. So it's a bit of a problem. Again, likely implicit use without naming Josephus. Now Tertullian against Appian and the War of the Jews, argument and themes paralleling Josephus' defenses of Jewish antiquity. So the medium confidence here that he's actually read this, though it's not actually sure. Julius Africanus, show chronology fragments, Violator. Authors, of course, Hasmonean, Herodian material akin to Josephus, possibly via Nicholas of Damascus. So again, this is a load of medium confidence, but it looks as though he has the Antiquities in front of him for some of his research. Hippolytus, likely reading Wars. Melito of Sardis, again Wars. Methodius of Olympus, again Antiquities here, engages Origen's use of Josephus in arguing about retribution motifs. So this is, again, it's possible that he will have read this. And one thing we must remember is that if it had been a source that is so radiant about Christianity and Christ and so on as it is, it would have been picked up by other Christians. It would have been talked about quite a lot. There's Pseudo-Hegesippus, again, adaptations, translations derived from Josephus, so before 400. This is a Christian Latin adaptation of Josephus's Wars, again, heavily Christianized paraphrase, widely read in the Latin West, often misattributed in the MSS, sometimes to Ambrose, and long confused with Josephus. So there's a possibilities here again of people who are reading adaptations of Josephus into, like, I think this would be Latin now, is that right? Yeah. Honourable mentions, John Chrysostom. So he is talking around about 400, recommends his audiences read Josephus for the destruction of Jerusalem. Explicit use, but just after 400. Okay, so he also does not mention the Testimonium. Orosius. Again here, so he's talking about 470 CE, uses Josephus on the fall of Jerusalem, names Josephus, okay, Latin testimony from Hispania, reflects transmission independent of Eusebius and Jerome. Here's interesting stuff, right? This is cool. So we got Orosius after 400, but still it seems as though he's using translations that just do not have the Testimonium in them. A note on the Testimonium Flavianum then. Among all attestations listed, only Eusebius transmits the Testimonium Flavianum. Origen, who read Josephus closely, explicitly says Josephus did not believe in Jesus, showing his copy lacked the TF. Okay, and there are reasons why he might be saying this, and people often say, well, he says that it wasn't, that he didn't believe Josephus believed Jesus was the Christ. But there are reasons why he might say this without there having been even a minimal passage in Josephus. There are other reasons. One of them, of course, is that he believed Josephus believed Titus was actually going to be the Messiah. And he gets things wrong, and he misattributes words after a while. He begins to misattribute things actually in his Hegesippus for Josephus. So that's another reason why he might be getting confused here. So all earlier Christians, so Theophilus, Irenaeus, Clement, Meletius Felix, and Tundalinus make no mention of it. Of course, Jerome is rightly regarded as derivative of Eusebius. But he's not. And Pseudo-Hegesippus, Chrysostom, and Oresius used Josephus on the war and destruction of Jerusalem, but show no awareness of the Testimonium Flavianum. So it is all rather interesting, isn't it? This is an argument from silence, of course, but we can reliably estimate this being fairly strong evidence for the claim that the Testimonium comes later on, and we've already discussed in a few videos why there is much more evidence for the Testimonium being fake and being an interpolation. Only about 100 or so words, about 25-30 seconds to read it. So it's a small piece of text that was most likely wedged into a section of in Josephus chapter 18, talking about Pilate. So yes, I just wanted to put that out there so we can understand why a little more about the authors here, the commentators, who fail to notice the Testimonium as wonderful and as glowing a reference to Jesus Christ, and as perfectly detailed, even though it's a short a reference. Rising on the third day, had many followers. The tribe of Christians to this day are still with us. He was the Christ, of course, did many paradoxical, magical deeds and so on. Yeah, it's a Christian fake. Okay.